My mother cheated with my best friend for 8 months. Years later, my fiancé conspired with her behind my back. I canceled the wedding, and they never expected I'd choose my peace over their good intentions. I'm 29 years old, work as a supervisor at a logistics company, and there are still days when I wake up thinking about how everything went to shit in a matter of seconds. You know, going from having a relatively normal life to basically having everything you thought you knew about the people you loved most just crumble. I guess I should start from the beginning, when things still made sense, before my mother decided to destroy our family in the most twisted way possible. I grew up in a pretty standard house, nothing special, but we didn't lack anything either. My father, William, was like 51 years old when all this happened. He was one of those quiet but dependable men, you know? The type of person who's always there when you need them but doesn't make much noise about it. He worked in maintenance for a construction company, left early, and came back tired but always in a good mood. My mother, Patricia, was the complete opposite. Outgoing, always organizing things, always with some new project. She was like 46 years old and still one of those people who can't sit still for even a second. I looked at them and thought they had a good marriage. I mean, they weren't the type to be showing affection in public, but you could tell they loved each other, you know what I mean? Or at least that's what I thought. Jordan had been my best friend since middle school, like since we were about 13 years old. That guy was practically part of the family. Spent more time at my house than at his own because his parents had gotten divorced when he was young, and his mom worked double shifts almost always. My mother treated him like another son, made him food, asked him about his stuff, and I thought that was great because Jordan needed that mother figure, you know? How ironic all that sounds now, honestly. We were inseparable, did everything together. Video games, sports, hung out with the same people. That type of friendship you think is going to last a lifetime because you've been through everything together. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. But when you trust people, you don't go around looking for signs of betrayal, right? It was like 3 years ago when I started noticing weird things. Small details that at the moment didn't seem so important, but that later made all the sense in the world. Jordan would come to the house even when I wasn't there, and my mother always had some excuse, like she had invited him to eat or that she needed help with something around the house. One time I came home early from work, and the two of them were in the kitchen laughing about something, and when they saw me, they went silent immediately, like as if I had caught them doing something wrong. I just thought it was weird but didn't think much of it because, I mean, who the hell thinks their mother and their best friend are having something? Literally, it's the last thing that would occur to you. There were other things too. Like my mother started getting dressed up more, often for no apparent reason, like she'd put on perfume just to be at home, bought new clothes constantly, spent a lot of time on her phone, and got nervous if anyone came near her while she was using it. My father didn't seem to notice anything. Or maybe he did notice but didn't want to see reality. I don't know. Jordan also started acting different with me, like more distant at certain times, less interested in going out or doing the things we always did together. When I asked him what was up, he'd say he was busy with work or had other things to do. And I like an idiot believed him because I never had reasons to doubt him. Everything exploded on a Thursday afternoon. I remember it perfectly, because it was my day off, and I was playing video games in my room. My father had left early as always, but that day he finished earlier than normal and came back to the house like at 2 in the afternoon, something completely unusual for him. I heard him arrive, heard his truck in the driveway, but I didn't come out to greet him because I was in the middle of a match. What I did hear a few minutes later were screams. Horrible screams coming from downstairs, and my father's voice sounded in a way I had never heard before, like completely broken and furious at the same time. I ran down the stairs and the scene I found basically shattered my soul into 1,000 pieces. My father was standing in the living room with his face red, hands shaking, and my mother was there with teary eyes, completely disheveled, and Jordan, that son of a bitch, he was trying to put on his shirt while running toward the door. I didn't need anyone to explain anything to me. The image said it all. My father had caught them together. In our house. On the living room couch where I had spent 1,000 afternoons watching movies with my family. I stood frozen on the stairs, unable to process what I was seeing, like my brain refused to accept that this was actually happening. Jordan saw me and tried to say something. I don't know what, because I just yelled at him to get the hell out of my house before I did something I was going to regret. He ran out like the rat he was, and my mother started crying, saying she was sorry, that it had been a mistake, that she didn't know how it had happened. My father just looked at her with an expression I'll never be able to forget, like a mixture of pain, betrayal, and disgust. And then he turned to look at me and said, "Your mother and I need to talk. Can you give us a moment?" I just nodded and left the house because I needed air. I needed to process what I had just seen. I needed someone to tell me this was all a nightmare. I walked around the neighborhood for like an hour, aimlessly, with my mind completely blank and at the same time full of 1,000 thoughts. How long had this been going on? How did it start? Did everyone know except my father and me? How many times had Jordan been in my house doing that while I was at work? The questions were driving me crazy, and I felt like I was going to explode. When I got back to the house, my father was alone in the kitchen drinking coffee. My mother had locked herself in her room. He saw me come in and just said, "Sit down, son. I need to tell you everything." My father explained to me that he had come back early because he felt sick to his stomach and wanted to rest a bit before finishing his shift. When he got to the house, he heard noises in the living room, thought I was there with some girl or something. But when he opened the door, he found my mother and Jordan in a situation that left no room for doubt. He told me he'd had suspicions for months because my mother had been acting weird, but he never imagined it was with Jordan. Never imagined his wife would be capable of that, and much less with his son's best friend. Tears were running down his face as he told me, and I felt just as destroyed as he was, like we shared the same pain but from different perspectives. That night I confronted my mother when she finally came out of her room. She tried to explain herself, to justify the unjustifiable, saying she had felt lonely, that my father worked a lot, that Jordan listened to her and made her feel young again. Basically all the pathetic excuses a person uses when they know they fucked everything up but don't want to accept full responsibility. I just looked at her and couldn't believe this was the same woman who had raised me, who had taught me about right and wrong, about honesty and respect. I asked her how long they'd been doing this and she didn't want to tell me at first, but after insisting, she admitted like 8 months. 8 fucking months of lies, of betrayal, of looking my father and me in the face every day like nothing. I said horrible things to her. I'm not going to lie. Things a person shouldn't say to their mother, but that in that moment, I felt I needed to say. I told her she had destroyed our family, that she had betrayed not only my father, but me too, that Jordan was my best friend and she knew that perfectly well, that how was it possible she had been so selfish and so blind? She just cried and repeated that she was sorry, but apologies didn't mean anything anymore. The damage was done, and there was no way to turn back time. The next day I went to Jordan's apartment. I don't know exactly what I planned to do. I just knew I needed to see him face to face and tell him everything I thought. When he opened the door and saw me, the expression on his face was pure fear, like he knew exactly why I was there. I told him we needed to talk and he let me in, although you could tell he didn't want to. We were like 20 minutes in his living room, and he tried to explain himself just like my mother, saying it hadn't been his intention, that things just happened, that he valued me as a friend, but that he had fallen in love with my mother. That last part made me explode, because, did he really think saying he was in love with her made things better? I yelled at him that he was a traitor, that he had broken the most important trust that existed between two people, that I never wanted to see him or know anything about him again. We almost came to blows, but I held back because I knew that wasn't going to solve anything. It was just going to get me in trouble. I left that apartment and blocked his number, deleted him from all my social media, basically erased his existence from my life. Some mutual friends tried to make me change my mind, saying everyone makes mistakes, that our friendship was too valuable to throw away, but none of them really understood what I was feeling. It's not the same when your friend betrays you in a normal way, like hooking up with your girlfriend or talking bad about you. This was different. This involved my family, my mother. It was a level of betrayal that has no comparison. My father filed for divorce like 2 weeks later. There was nothing to talk about. There was no couples therapy that could fix what my mother had done, and he knew it. The process was relatively quick because my mother didn't fight anything. I think she knew she had no argument in her favor. She went to live with a friend in the meantime, and I stayed with my father in the house. It was a very weird time, like the house felt empty even when we were both there, and my father had aged like 10 years in a matter of weeks. I tried to be there for him. We cooked together, watched sports, did what we could to maintain a routine, but we both knew nothing was ever going to be the same again. My mother tried to contact me several times during those months. She sent me messages, emails, even handwritten letters, trying to explain herself again, asking for forgiveness, begging me to let her be part of my life. I didn't respond to anything. I simply ignored her, because I had nothing to say to her. Some people told me I was being too hard, that at the end of the day she was still my mother and everyone deserves a second chance. But those people didn't understand that this wasn't just about forgiving a mistake, it was about respecting boundaries and protecting my own mental health. I couldn't have in my life someone capable of that level of betrayal. It didn't matter if we shared blood or not. Like a year after all that mess, I met Sophia at a barbecue that a coworker organized. She was a friend of my coworker's girlfriend, and they introduced us casually. She was cute, funny, easy to deal with, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could connect with someone without having to carry all the weight of my family situation. We started dating and things flowed pretty naturally. Like without pressure, without drama, just two people getting to know each other and having a good time. She knew about my situation with my mother from the beginning because I was honest about it. I told her everything that had happened and she seemed to understand it. I told me she respected my decision and wasn't going to pressure me to do something I didn't want to. We dated for like 2.5 years, and honestly, they were good years. Sophia helped me recover some trust in people, showed me that not everyone is capable of betraying in that way, that healthy and honest relationships still exist. My father really liked her too, said it did him good to see me happy after everything that had happened. I decided to propose to her one weekend. We went to the beach, nothing too elaborate but meaningful, and she said yes. We were planning a small wedding, just close family and friends, something simple because neither of us wanted anything too ostentatious. Like 6 months after we got engaged, I found out from a cousin that Jordan had been arrested for robbery. Apparently, he'd been getting into trouble since everything exploded with my mother, started hanging out with the wrong people, getting into shady stuff, and eventually ended up trying to rob an electronics store. They caught him red-handed and sentenced him to like 3 years in prison. When I found out, I didn't feel anything. Not satisfaction or pity, just nothing. That guy had stopped existing for me a long time ago, and knowing he was in jail didn't change anything in my life. What did change things was that my mother took advantage of the situation to try to get close to me again. She sent me a long email, like one of those that clearly took her hours to write, where she told me that she and Jordan had ended their relationship a long time ago, that he had turned out to be a different person than she thought, that she deeply regretted everything she had done, and that now that he was in jail, she realized how much she had lost by chasing something that was never real. Basically, she wanted to use Jordan's downfall as a way to reconnect with me, as if the fact that he turned out to be trash somehow absolved her of her own decisions. I didn't respond because, honestly, I wasn't interested in her belated self-reflection or her attempts to justify the unjustifiable. Sophia knew about the email because I mentioned it to her casually, like as a passing comment, and she asked me how I felt about it. I told her I didn't feel anything, that my mother had made her choice years ago and I had made mine by cutting contact with her. Sophia nodded and told me she understood, that she respected my position. What I didn't know is that behind my back, Sophia had started communicating with my mother, thinking she was doing something good, thinking she could be the person who brought us together and that would magically fix everything. She never asked me if that was something I wanted, never respected the boundaries I had clearly established. She simply decided on her own that she knew better than I did what I needed. I found out in the most horrible way possible. One Saturday night, Sophia told me she had made reservations at a new restaurant she wanted to try, that we should dress nice, because it was a fancy place. I thought it was a normal date, like one of those nights where you go out to dinner and have a good time. We got to the restaurant, and when the waiter was taking us to our table, I saw my mother sitting there, dressed up, nervous, looking at me with that expression of hope that made me feel physically sick. I stopped dead in my tracks and turned to look at Sophia with an expression that must have made it clear to her that she had fucked everything up in the worst possible way. Sophia tried to explain herself right there, saying she thought it was time for my mother and me to talk, that resentment wasn't good, that she just wanted to help, that my mother deserved a chance to apologize face to face. I didn't say anything. Literally couldn't say anything. I just turned around and walked out of the restaurant, leaving both of them there. I heard Sophia calling me, but I didn't turn around. Kept walking to the car, got in, and left. I drove aimlessly for like half to an hour trying to calm down because I was shaking with rage, like I felt my chest was going to explode. When I finally got to the house, Sophia was already there. Had taken an Uber, apparently. She came in behind me trying to talk, but I yelled at her. How could she have thought to do that? That I had made it perfectly clear from the beginning what my situation was with my mother. That she had no right to make that decision for me. That she had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. And she started crying, saying she just wanted to help. That she thought I would appreciate the gesture eventually. That my mother had changed and deserved forgiveness. I told her I didn't care if my mother had changed or not, that it wasn't her decision to make, that she had betrayed my trust in a way I couldn't forgive. That night we slept separately, her in the guest room and me in our bedroom, and during the following days we tried to talk about it, but we didn't get anywhere. Sophia insisted I had acted with good intentions, and I explained to her over and over that intentions didn't matter when you trampled on someone's boundaries like that. I started to realize that if she had been capable of doing this, of conspiring with my mother behind my back for who knows how long, then she really didn't know me or didn't respect me enough to understand why those boundaries were so important to me. I made the hardest decision of my life up to that point and called off the wedding. I told Sophia I couldn't marry someone who didn't respect my boundaries, that I couldn't build a future with someone who had proven capable of betraying my trust in that way. She tried to convince me to reconsider, that we should go to couples therapy, that we could get through this. What she had done wasn't a simple mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a fundamental violation of the trust we had built, and without that trust, there was no possible relationship. Sophia moved out, 2 weeks later. It was horrible to see her pack her things, to see how the life we had planned together was crumbling, just like my family had crumbled years before. Part of me wondered if I was being too hard, if I should give her another chance. But another part of me, the part that had learned the hardest lesson about betrayal, knew I was doing the right thing. I couldn't allow myself to be with someone who thought they knew better than I did what I needed, someone who didn't respect the decisions I had made about my own life and my own relationships. Now it's been 6 months since Sophia left. I live alone in a smaller apartment. My father still lives in the house where I grew up, but he's thinking about selling it and moving to something smaller too. He and I are good. We see each other often, have dinner together on Sundays. Maintain that connection that became even stronger after everything we went through. I haven't heard anything from my mother since that night at the restaurant, and Sophia tried to contact me a couple times at first, but eventually stopped. I don't have resentment toward her. Honestly, just sadness that things ended that way, but I know it was the right decision. Sometimes people ask me if I'm ever going to forgive my mother, if I'm going to give her the chance to be in my life again. The honest answer is, I don't know. I don't feel the same level of rage I felt 3 years ago, but I also don't feel the desire to reconnect with her. Maybe someday, who knows? But for now, I'm okay maintaining that distance, protecting my peace of mind, and focusing on the relationships that are worth it. My father told me recently he was proud of me for standing firm on my boundaries, for not letting anyone pressure me into doing something I didn't want to do, and those words meant more to me than he probably imagined.